For USCFootball.com, I'm Keely Eure here with Chris Treviño for instant analysis of USC's 30-7 win over San José State in the Coliseum to open the 2021 season. Now, Chris, we saw every fall camp practice, so I don't think this game was too much of a surprise for us. We knew coming in that this offense was going to be powered by wide receiver Drake London and his individual efforts, and we knew that the defense is a tone setter. They can lead the way with their physical style of play. It's kind of what we saw today. What were your overall thoughts from the game?
Absolutely, Keely. It was just basically a microcosm of everything we've seen in spring and fall camp. You know, the offense does not have a clear number 2 wide receiver, and for that reason, we thought there would be some inconsistencies, stuff we saw out there on the field on Saturday. There's still some red zone deficiencies, inefficiencies, things that carried over from the 2020 season. Yeah. We thought that, there would be some improvement in the run game, and I think we saw that on the day between Keontae Ingram and Vavae Malapea. They had a really nice day, and overall, the run game had one of their best days we've seen in a long time. Yep. And then, obviously, the defense was that tone setter. We knew that this year, in year 2 under Todd Orlando, they had all that offseason, all that time to prep and get on the same page after a quickened 2020 offseason that wasn't really an offseason. We thought they were going to come out with a lot more confidence, everyone on the same page, and that really showed. Even when they had to make a quick switch into Kalyn Bullock, a true freshman, with Isaiah Polamau, the 2-time captain, the story that you broke that he was out for health and safety protocols, they didn't really miss a beat. There were a couple issues here and there, but for the most part, they looked pretty smooth, and they even had a second new starter in Chase Williams, who was making his first season opening start. 2 guys on the back end. That's a very important position in Todd Orlando's defense. You need that communication. But everything went well. Everything played smoothly. They shut out San Jose State, a team that was averaging 45 points per game after their Week 0 win. They held them to 0 points in the first half. That's an impressive stat to hang your hat on, especially with a 6-year quarterback that San Jose State and Nick Starkel. So they did their job. They came in here, and I think it's safe to say the defense earned them this win.
Mm-hmm. Now, if you watched our practice reports in fall, one of the questions that we kept asking was who's going to be the second, third, fourth receiving option for Kedon Slovis? And it looks like we still have that question coming out of today's game. In camp, we thought maybe Taj Washington could be the guy. And I think today we thought maybe Taj Washington could be the guy. He was the first Trojan to score in the 2021 season, but some inconsistencies, and that's what we saw in fall camp as well. How do you think this wide receiver group is going to develop going forward, given that they still need to gel with Kedon Slovis?
I just want to point out that maybe Taj Washington joke, that was my joke. I want credit in the writer's room. If anyone's keeping track of my jokes, I want credit for that one.
Okay.
But yes, maybe Taj Washington. We thought, it looked kind of good early because, he got that early score. They were up 10-0, and it looked like, maybe they're going to run away with this. He had that really nice 29-yard catch, high pointed the ball beautifully, was patient, showed why he was a freshman All-American at Memphis. But then things kind of sputtered out, and then it just became solely reliant on Drake London. And, he saw 16 targets. If you add up everyone else's targets, it was still Drake London's target show, and he finished with 12 catches for about 137 yards, which was a career day for him. But that's going to add up over a long season. We can see them out. He's a competitive guy, so he was, trying to break tackles, trying to run through people. But that just means he's going to get gang tackled. He's going to have guys going low. He's going to have guys hitting him from all different sides as he's trying to break those tackles and get more yards, and that's going to build up. There were a couple times where I think if you were a USC fan, you were a little bit worried about the hits he was taking out there. There were a couple times that, they pulled him out. He's a little bit gimpy, but, credit to him. He was a warrior. He kept playing through it, but that's not something that can happen for a full season. They really need someone to step up. Joseph Manjack got a lot of praise in fall camp, earned that starting role, but didn't have a catch today. I don't think he had a target. K.D. Nixon, the transfer from Colorado, he only had 1 target on a fade route on a weird-looking play, but only 2 wide receivers caught passes. Drake London and Taj Washington. Yep. That's it. That cannot hold up for a full season, so the USC needs to work in some more people. Mm-hmm. They need to work in some more offensive options. Michael Trigg got it a little bit late in the game, but, didn't really have an impact there. So they need to find someone that can give a consistent threat outside of number 15.
Mm-hmm. Now, we thought coming into the season that all eyes were going to be on the run game. How is that going to perform? And we saw running backs coach Mike Jinks say in fall camp, hey, I want a 1A, 1B option. And it looked like that on Saturday. We saw Vavae Malapea and Keontae Ingram get significant playing time. Keontae Ingram, the transfer, actually led the day in rushing yards. And so what did you make of the run game and the new offensive line that came with it?
Yeah, I was cautiously optimistic when I was writing my practice reports, like, hey, I'm seeing some nice little holes here and there. We're seeing some nice runs in practice, but I don't know really how it's going to translate until they get out on this field, until they're facing, a live defense. But I think it held up pretty well. I mean, they finished with about 160 yards, which is one of their best run performances, going back into 2020, where they were dead last in the Pac-12. So you saw signs of growth there. Everyone seems to be on board with Clay McGuire's new simplified run calls. Everything's on the same page, much more simple. So I think we saw that out there in effect. And Keontae Ingram and Vavae Malapea had some really nice runs, and I thought they worked really well as a combo. Vavae, number 6, he's going hard all the time. He's breaking tackles. He's juking people out. Not the quickest guy, but he still finds a way to pick up those yards. And then when he comes out, defense can't get a rest because Keontae Ingram running just as hard as number 6, and we saw that there today. There were a couple stops in the backfield, but for the most part, those guys were grinding all game, and it paid off with some decent runs. And, I think fans should be encouraged by what they saw here on Saturday, and just got to find the end zone next time. And that kind of just plays back into the red zone issues that we saw going to 2020 here again today, rearing their head on Saturday.
Mm-hmm. Now, we mentioned the defense led the way. I got to talk to Tuli Tuipulotu after the game. He said the game plan was to make San Jose State one-dimensional, and that's what they did. They held the Spartans to 67 yards on the ground. So they made Nick Starkel try and beat them with his arm, and ultimately he couldn't do that.
Yeah, I think that was obviously a huge question for USC's defense, that how would they hold up in the run game? No. How would they hold up in that run defense? Would they get gashed, especially when they don't have a true nose tech type body in there, with Brandon Keely out for the season, Ishmael Sopsher still on the men. They were going with a maybe an undersized guy, and don't get mad at me, he's undersized for a nose tackle, but yeah. Stanley Tuafu.
It's a hard one.
It's a hard one. I just like to prefer to call him the Tongan Terror, as Nick Figueroa dubbed him. But, they held up really well. They were mixing in, a guy like Jamar Sakona, a guy who I thought maybe could be the starter coming out of camp. He got held up with the health and safety protocols early, but he made an impact, and I think they did a really good job of just rotating in there and getting fresh bodies in there to hold up. And like you said, they made them one-dimensional, make Starkel try to beat them with the arm. Didn't really do that, obviously. So I think you have to give a really good grade to this run defense. And I think they proved a lot of people wrong in saying, we can hold up. Obviously, that has to carry out for an entire season. And, they need to stay healthy with that because the depth is really limited until Sopsher gets back. But I think they had a good week one performance.
Mm-hmm. Now, this was an interesting game to try and have the quarterback beat you with his arm, considering the state of the secondary, especially as the game evolved. But as you mentioned, reported coming into the game that Isaiah Polomau did not start and wasn't even at the Coliseum due to health and safety protocols. So they turned to true freshman Kalyn Bullock, who came to USC in the spring, and I thought he had a great game. He led the team in tackles, and we talked to, I forgot who it was, but it was Chris Steele. He said, we call him Sticks, but he's everywhere. He was making plays all the time, and it seemed like the guys were very, not only proud of Kalyn Bullock, but impressed by what he could do.
Oh, the guys were absolutely proud what number 27 did out there on that field. You're right, they call him Sticks. He is a little bit skinnier than most of the guys, still needs to add some weight, but man, he has just incredible ball skills. He knows how to find the football. He's all over the field. He made with that great 3rd and 2 tackle that stopped to make it a 4th and short. And yeah, like you said, he was leading the team in tackles because obviously San Jose State, they saw true freshman starter making his first game. Let's go after him. But he answered the call. And everyone that you talked to in that secondary was so proud of what he did. I talked to him after the game, and he talked like it wasn't really a big deal. He was like, I felt ready. There was a little bit of nerves coming to that game, but, I felt prepared. And even Chase Williams said, like, no, he didn't really see, he wasn't really worried about Kalyn out there because he said, we prepared for this. Yeah. We knew coming into this week, he found out he was going to be starting on Wednesday, so that gives him a little bit of a mental edge going into that. But he really stepped up, and everyone said, we prepare for this. We knew what to expect, and, he handled his job. And credit to Craig Nivar and that defense for having all those guys ready to go and not missing a beat when their names were called up.
Mm-hmm. Now, when it comes to taking this game and projecting what it means for the season ahead, Chris, to be brutally honest, I feel like we've seen this season opener in the Clay Helton era pretty much every single season. It's an offense that kind of struggles a little bit. Defense will bend and not break. What do you make of these red zone issues under Graham Harrell in year 3?
Yeah, I mean, this is, like you said, the year 3. It's a question I'm sure the guys are tired of talking about. That was a popular question in among media interviews today after the game. A lot of the players were asked, do you have any idea why you have red zone issues? And obviously that's a tough question for a player to answer. They're not the coach, they're not the one looking at the film, and they don't have the benefit of looking at the film. But no one seemed really concerned about it. They were like, yeah, we just have to get back into the film room. We have to fix it in practice. But no one really had like a definitive answer for why there were red zone issues. So, I've heard people talk about maybe it's just everyone has to be on the same page. You need communication. You can't have one guy doing this thing and one guy doing that thing. One guy doing this thing and one guy doing that thing. And another could be, there's a lot of new faces out there. You have 2 starting redshirt freshmen out there making their first start at tackles. You have some freshman wide receivers. You have some guys who weren't in this offense last year. So, it could be a continuation, but it could also be, by week 6, this team could be scoring consistently in the red zone. But we just have to wait and see. I'll give them a little bit of a pass in week 1 just because there were some new faces, but this thing has to get going quick because you cannot leave points out on the board. Mm-hmm. And, USC was lucky that their defense was there to carry them in this one. Yeah. They got a touchdown on their own. At one point, the defense had as many touchdowns as the offense. Yeah. Greg Johnson with an incredible pick 6. Yeah. We'll probably talk about it a little bit later. But, yeah, the offense needs to step up in the red zone. They need to find answers quick because if they want to win the Pac-12 championship, you need to score. And you can't leave it all on the defense. You need to give them a little bit of help. And, again, this defense answered the call. Again, last year they were put in positions where they had to make up for the offense not being able to score. So I guess they're used to it. But it would be nice to have a little bit more consistency with that offense.
Mm-hmm. Now, when it comes to the red zone issues, and you talked about the pass, I asked Graham Harrell how much of the playbook was limited. I know we saw some more wrinkles in fall camps, and they're not going to put everything on tape in week 1. Do you give a pass because of that, or because we've seen this team have these consistent issues, are you concerned going forward?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like half and half for me. Like I just said, I feel like I will give them a little bit of a pass. Just a small, tiny, minuscule pass that you have to look at with a microscope. But I feel like, like I said, there's a lot of new faces, a lot of guys picking up the offense, a lot of guys maybe don't know the offense completely yet, a lot of guys that Keaton has to build chemistry with. So I'm not ready to just say, oh, it's the same old thing. But I will say it's not an encouraging sign that, again, you struggle to put away some points, struggle to put away a San José State team, which I know we said is a pretty good team. Yeah. They're not like a typical cupcake. They have championship experience. They're veterans, but still, you were up 10-0, and it looked like you were rolling, and then everything just kind of fell out there. So that's not an encouraging sign. Smallest of passes.
Okay.
But they have to get it going within the next week or so. You have Stanford coming. Your Pac-12 opener, can't be sleeping on Stanford.
Mm-hmm. Now, as far as injuries goes, USC came out pretty clean. We talked to Chris Steele, and he said he had a bit of a hamstring issue. That's why you saw more of Jaden Williams towards the later half of the game. Drake Jackson was in and out there, so we saw more of Corey Foreman. But USC didn't have, it seemed, any major injuries. I know you talked to Nick Figueroa after the game.
Yeah, I think Nick Figueroa, big number 50, that was the most addressing or concerning one for USC fans. He came out of halftime with that shoulder sling up. He was out for the game as the broadcast team announced. I did catch him a little bit after the game. He said he just, quote-unquote, messed it up a little bit. Clay Helton gave a little bit more scientific term for a messed-up shoulder as an AC joint sprain. Yeah. So he said he felt like he was going to be ready for next week, which is a big sigh of relief for USC fans, especially a guy who had shoulder surgery this offseason with that torn labrum. But he sounded like he was going to be back next week. We have to see on that. Players say that all the time. Yeah. Oh, I'll be good for next week, and then they're not good for next week. So we'll see on that one. But that's a big one to lose. But again, I think the defense stepped up in that absence. But again, not AC joint sprain. You can live with that, even if it's out for a couple weeks. But he sounded optimistic that he was going to be back soon.
Mm-hmm. As you alluded to, Chris, USC actually starts Pac-12 play next week with Stanford. Any final thoughts before we wrap this one up?
No, I mean, we didn't really talk about it that much, but I just wanted to give props to Greg Johnson, who had that incredible pick 6. I think that was the nail in the coffin. It follows the script of these season openers. USC is kind of like back and forth with this team, not really closing out. And then they get a random big play that will kind of close it out down the stretch. And, that's such a great moment for a guy who was born and raised in L.A., grew up less than 10 minutes from the Coliseum. And, he said he wanted to be here to be a Trojan, and this place is means a lot to him. So to be able to get that pick 6, first game back with all the fans, and I saw him afterwards. He was signing autographs. He had a bunch of his old Hawkins teammates here, Hawkins coaches. He was the man of the match afterwards. Everyone just wanted a piece of Greg Johnson. So that's a huge play, and that's the type of play you want to see out of your senior. Obviously, he lost that time last year when he had the knee surgery in the middle of the year, lost it. But he came back, and he hasn't missed a step. He's looked like a new and improved Greg Johnson, the new number 1, out there making plays. So that's an important part, especially when you were down a guy like Isaiah Pulamau. Yeah. That was one of the consistent parts, that you had a veteran guy like Greg step up and make that play. And Chase Williams said, Greg just manifested that. The whole day going in, he was like, I'm going to get one. And what do you know? He gets one. So way to manifest it. Maybe I got to start manifesting better with my predictions and stuff. But because I did not do well today. We'll get into that another time, but did not do well. So, and I think the other part was a little disappointing was you didn't see a lot of sacks out there.
True.
USC's defense, the defensive line came in with a lot of praise, a lot of talent to get to the quarterback, but 0 sacks today. I talked to Jake Lichtenstein about. They said, yeah, that can't happen. We're really disappointed we didn't get to the quarterback. He was getting the ball out quick. But he said next week, they hope to correct that, and they're hoping to rack up some sacks next week. So we'll see if that holds true.
Yep. Also worth mentioning, Greg Johnson got sword honors, which, by the way, fans back in the Coliseum, the band back, so he was able to go with the band and have that sword up. So good for Greg Johnson. I feel like he's an underrated guy in this USC defense.
Oh, absolutely. And, credit to the players, obviously, and getting to experience all those fans. But we liked it, too. We liked having the fans back, hear the roar of that crowd. And, the players, just like a Greg Johnson pick six, just to hear everyone going like last year, that would have been like crickets.
Yeah.
At just the sideline going. But this time, you get to see everyone celebrating together. So that was a nice sight to see.
Yeah.
So, it was great to be back there and just feel, the fan energy again. It was great.
Yeah, it definitely felt like college football, which was nice. Alrighty, that's going to wrap it up for USC's win over San Jose State. For Chris Treviño, I'm Keely Eure. For more, check out uscfootball.com.